Well, thank you so much for being here. I know we are the last talk. I know we have delicious cookies outside, but you won't fall asleep, I promise, right? This is going to be a very interesting talk. So immaturity can be fun, just not in a CTI program. Let me start you off with a little story here, right? Let's go back a few years ago when maybe you were hacking away video games, maybe you were hacking websites and so on, right? You were maybe in your teenagers, early 20s. However, right, maybe you're still doing it right now, playing CTF. It's all fun, right? But then you get a job, you start like doing offensive security, incident response, then you transition to CTI, and then you realize, oh, finally, I'm some sort of like senior team lead, principal. You move into a new company and you realize they do CTI completely different. Maybe you are actually developing the services, capabilities, features, and you ask a question, right? Like, oh, okay, I can do it because I have a maturity level from some vendor and I can do it this way. But I also have tools and other stakeholders. I don't know what to do, right? Because certain maturity levels only help you here, but not like, why worldwide or like company-wide, if you will, right? And our talk today is about that, right? We are going to present a framework. In fact, we released it last year, but we do have some updates. And so the agenda for today is basically who are we, an overview of the maturity framework, and also John will talk about how is it organized, why, how to use it, right, and who is this for. And then we'll talk about the new items that we added to the framework. So who are we, John?
Yeah, John Holland. I'm an intelligence analyst by trade. Left government several years ago and wound up in industry, and now work with companies and federal agencies, helping them figure out what is CTI and how do we get value out of it. How do we plan a path forward? So when talked to Mike DeBold about this initiative, I was really excited because I was like, man, like this is something that we really need. So yeah, that's me.
And I'm Alex Perez Palma. I've been an analyst, engineer, ICS security research. I have some CVs under my belt. Currently, I do threat intelligence for Workday, and I'm also an advisor for a couple of companies. I enjoy really bringing people together, organizations together, breaking silos, and advancing programs, right? So why another maturity model? Yeah, sometimes our industry is rough, right? But also our industry is beautiful. People that want to collaborate, people that want to share, people that want to teach each other. And this is exactly what happened here. And we all know that there's a bunch of maturity models, so why another one, right? Why you are giving me another one that may be not useful to me? Well, here's so for some context, right? We're seeing a bunch of maturity frameworks here, and it is my opinion that these maturity frameworks actually, they are great. And at their time, they actually added value to most of you and your organizations, your teams, right? Because otherwise, they basically companies, they feel a gap that needed to be filled. Now, we know again from my previous story that while these amazing maturity models only serve like certain companies or certain features or services, and then you have all of these stakeholders and you don't know, well, what about these toolings? What about my open source toolings or whatever, right? What about that? And that's where the CTI-CMM comes in, right? We are basically, the difference here is we are outcome focused, case driven, right? And we are basically, we want to help you mature with your stakeholders, with the different domains. We understand that some of you do CTI for government, for private, right? We understand that some of you are even like maybe doing research and CTI looks different that way, right? So our framework also emphasizes on CTI practices and capabilities, business risk outcomes, right? And we also talk about program management and workforce management, because as you mature your team, depending where you are, or even if you are from the engineering perspective, you want to know what is next. What kind of project is innovative enough for next? You can use this framework. So how was this developed, right? Well, we actually looked at other frameworks, the Cybersecurity Capability Maturity Model, the CTI-CMM, and we thought, well, this is a great framework to actually try to imitate, right? Because it was developed by the Department of Energy. It syncs up really well with NIST 853 and the cybersecurity framework. And a bunch of people from the public sector and private sector contributed to it. So why reinvent the wheel when we have something amazing that we can actually use and get inspiration from? And that's how our CTI-CMM was modeled, right? And just remember this because the C2M2 actually has 10 domains, and ours now have 11, and we'll talk about that. Like I said, a bunch of people from different industries, government, research, education, private, came together. You see all these people here contributing to the CTM or the CTI-CMM model, right? And also, if you're looking at this, you'll realize some of them are like awesome engineers, awesome managers, awesome senior leaders, right? And some people who are like well-known in the industry, because we're trying to do something that is beautiful for the community. We're trying to give back to the community. And I think this is how we show that we care. This is how we show our expertise and knowledge.
All right, thanks, Alex. Yeah, so before we get into practical application of the model, thought it would be helpful to just kind of level set on some of the fundamentals. We've got a pretty mixed bag at conferences like this. I was talking to one fellow today. He's straight out of undergrad, looking to get his first job in CTI. Talked to somebody else, they're in IT and they're transitioning into CTI, but they don't have any background in any kind of intelligence operations. I know a lot of folks in the audience have a background in federal DoD or civilian intelligence operations. So I think level setting then, we'll cover, just talk about three things real quick. I won't belabor it, but I call them the three tenets of intelligence. And the first one is intelligence is a support function. The second one is you can't support what you don't understand. And the third is if it isn't relevant to the consumer, it isn't intelligence to the consumer. It might be intelligence to somebody else, but it's not intelligence to them because it's not relevant to their organization, their operations. So the first two are the ones that I want to talk about today, though. And the first one then, intelligence is a support function. Intelligence doesn't achieve anything on its own. It achieves through enhancing the capabilities of other organizations, of other units. That's what it does. It's a support function. It's not leading the charge, it's supporting those who are leading the charge. So as an example, intelligence doesn't make the decision, intelligence informs the decision. Intelligence doesn't triage the incident ticket, it enriches the incident ticket. It doesn't mitigate the threat, it identifies the threat. So its success then is predicated on its ability to enhance the capabilities of other units. And if we don't understand intelligence generally, whether it's cyber or counterterrorism or whatever, if we don't understand it more generally in that sense, then we won't be effective. And the second one then is that you can't support what you don't understand. And that gets us to, and just kind of covered that, right? If we don't understand the objectives of the organization that we're supporting and how they're going about achieving those objectives, then we can't effectively support them over the long term. We can get lucky and we can hit some good spots and get some good feedback, but we can't consistently deliver high quality intelligence that enhances their ability to do their mission if we don't understand what they're trying to achieve and how they're going about achieving it. And that brings us to one of the strengths, one of the big strengths of the CTI-CMM, and that is the interlock with the C2M2 model. So the way that we built this was we tied our domains to the domains and use cases of the C2M2, right? So for every instance so if you look at the domains, can I do this? We're gonna get crazy. Okay, and we're gonna try and go backwards here, see if this works. So for all of the 10 domains in the C2M2, we have a corresponding domain in the CTI-CMM. So those line up 1-to-1. So if you go in there and you look at the response domain or you look at the asset management domain, those are going to line up 1-to-1. There's one exception to that, and that's that new one that's marked there, fraud and abuse management. That's one that we added in version 1.1. So the V10 is apples to apples. V1.1 includes that new domain. But the idea there, and this is one of the big advantages over other maturity models, is that it enhances the CTI function's ability to understand the supported elements, right? So by the domains, and each domain isn't necessarily going to map to a specific function. In some of these domains, like asset management, right, or response, you're going to have multiple functions, multiple InfoSec functions within an organization that are going to tie to that domain or have a piece of that domain. But it enhances understanding of what the supported element is trying to achieve. And C2M2 then, right, it gives you the objective they're trying to hit, and it gives you the best practices for how they should be hitting it. And what we can do with that as intelligence analysts then, right, is look and see, okay, what is our stakeholder trying to achieve and how should they go about doing it? And then, right, directly map in what can we do to help them achieve that. The other thing, and that allows us really, what we're doing there is it allows us to get a lot closer to tying CTI capabilities to business risk. And that's where the money's at. That's where the budget's at. That's where the sustainability and the staying power of our program is at, is being able to show how is our CTI function supporting what leadership of the business really cares about. Another thing here is, and Alex mentioned this, is the focus on outcomes over outputs. Outcomes are what we're looking for. Outcomes are generating effects within the operations of our stakeholders. That's where we want to be. When we look at other maturity models, this is not to bag on other models, but that was just the focus of them. They've historically been focused on what needs to be done and what tools should we use to do it. If you're going to be a mature program, you need a dark web service. If you're going to be a mature program, you need this type of technology. So it's focused on the inputs and the outputs as opposed to the outcomes. And that's another big strength of the model. And I think one of the biggest things, especially in a budget constrained environment, we've seen a lot of layoffs. We've seen a lot of shakeups, big companies in the industry, right? A lot of changes that have affected CTI teams, people that we know, is being able to effectively communicate value. And the CTI-CMM framework then it helps connect the problem with the solution and the process. And when we can do that, then we're able to craft more compelling value propositions about why CTI matters and why we need CTI within an organization. And then it essentially becomes the foundation for building and illustrating value. So communicating value then, especially in this environment, is paramount. And I think one of the things that we want to keep in mind here is, and this ties back to that first tenet, that intelligence is a support function, is that intelligence, CTI, is dispensable. If CTI goes away, and we're seeing this right now in industry, entire CTI programs being just wiped, right? We're not going to do this anymore. We're going to do something else. We're going to put the money somewhere else. If the CTI program goes away, incidents still get triaged. Incidents still get responded to. Triage, right? Incident tickets, they still get triaged. All of these things still happen. Maybe not as effectively, maybe not as efficiently as they could have been, but they'll still happen. So when we think about CTI, we have to remember that it's not just the same. It's not on the same level as every other of every other function within the company, right? We have to fight a little bit harder to show our value, to help people understand what we do. And this is something that the model can really help with. And when we're able to communicate value more clearly, then we get into things like better access to data, better engagement with stakeholders. We earn feedback, right? That's a big deal. Is the stuff that we're producing any good? We're just pumping these reports into the ether. Does anybody get any value from these? When we're able to clearly illustrate the value that we are delivering to stakeholders, then we're more likely to get that feedback that we need to make our products better and to enhance the effectiveness of our CTI function. All right, so who's it for? For leaders, to help illustrate the value that CTI brings to the enterprise. For practitioners to help with integrating and applying CTI to stakeholder operations. And, pardon me, so to help with integrating from the CTI practitioner's perspective, right, to help them understand how to better integrate their outputs into stakeholder operations, but then for the stakeholder to understand, right, how do we apply this stuff? And the focus then, the focus for this should be understood is for internal CTI teams. This was designed with the, I guess, I don't know what the term would be, maybe like the nuclear team, right? The team serving a single organization. It wasn't developed for the vendor who's got, right, 200 clients, 500 clients that they're trying to support, or like an MSSP or something like that. There's certainly insights in here that can be drawn out for that, but that wasn't the intent. This was kind of for that, for lack of a better term, kind of that nuclear team that's serving a single organization. All right, we talked about how it's structured, what these domains, the different domains are. And this is just kind of just to show a visual of how this thing is laid out. We've got the title, right? And these are going to map for 10 of the 11. They're going to map directly to the C2M2. We've got the domain purpose here. This is just pulled right out of the C2M2. So this is just going to be that one-to-one mapping of what's the purpose of the domain. But when you get down here to the CTI mission, that's unique to our model, right? That is, how does CTI support this element of operations? And then we get into an example here, and this is just kind of a narrative example, kind of a very short story about how they do what they do and why it's effective. And then we get into use cases. The use cases then are going to consist of practices. And the practices are where you're going to get that more detailed information about what's to be done. And then CTI data sources is unique to our model as well, obviously. These are just the data sources that are relevant to this particular domain that CTI needs to have access to. Some of these are internal, some of these are third party, but you'll see these listed for each one. And then this is just another visual of what this looks like, right? So we've got our use cases here, and then you can see below that, as you scroll down through the document, you'll see that we have the use case and the practices laid out there. And this will map, as you look at these side by side, just pull them both up on your screen, you'll be able to see, right, how these things relate directly to each other.
And just as a reminder, right, it's not a prescriptive formula. Rather, it's supposed to guide, to help. So if you see, oh, these cases don't align with what we do, that's okay. We are trying to help you with examples. It's a guide, right? So just when you read it, when you go through it, if you don't find exactly, let's say for any reason you do fraud differently from what is presented, that is okay. It's just supposed to help you understand how to sort of mature your domain and cases.
Great, that's a great caveat there. Yeah, and as you go through the maturity levels, you'll kind of see that they kind of start out as just kind of broadly describing each maturity level. Like those level ones are ad hoc. They're things that are getting done, but they're not repeatable necessarily, or they're not consistent. The second is standardizing the practice, and then the third one is kind of innovation and automation focused. So you'll see that in the model. We won't go into any detail on that here, but so So yeah, practical application then. What we're looking at here is, and kind of what we laid out so far, is the model is helpful for educating CTI teams by enriching their understanding of stakeholder operations, educating stakeholders by illustrating a thoughtful and thorough process, and obviously informing informing the development and assessment of your CTI operations. So then this guy here, so this is an example of one of the use cases. This is the response use case, so event and incident response continuity of operations. And as you can see here, they've got 4, I think this might have a few more, but I pulled out 4 just to illustrate the application here. But as you can see, we've got detect cybersecurity events. So how do we detect, how do we help the groups that are involved in this domain? We strengthen pre-incident preparedness. And how do we do that? We do that by enhancing detections with open source and premium inputs, and we auto-enrich incidents with context and additional data. As you move down to that second one there, analyzing events and declaring incidents and responding to incidents, we have a single use case there that ties to both of those, and that covers things like supporting incident response in assessing severity of incidents, as well as integrating CTI inputs into incident response reports to help increase, improve response in future incidences. And then the last one there, addressing cybersecurity in continuity of operations planning. And we do that by enhancing post-incident recovery and COOP. And we do that by detection and identifying detection and prevention gaps and making sure that they are documented, and also ensuring that hunt activities and run books are updated, and that lessons learned from those incidents are integrated into future operations, or used to improve future operations. So then, I think to close out then, the maturity themes that you'll kind of see develop as you apply the model would be centering operations on customers, which is going to build trust and goodwill. It's also going to improve access to data and inputs, as well as engagement that the CTI program needs. And that's an important one. I touched on that earlier, but engagement is critical for CTI. So many times when I talk to companies and we talk about the challenges they're facing, so many of them stem from the fact that the CTI team is geographically or physically, as well as operationally isolated from other security functions. They are, they don't have access to data, which I think we sometimes kind of take as a given, right? It's a company's data. Every organization in the company should have equal access to it, and nobody can keep us from getting access to the data. That's simply untrue. Many times, I've seen CTI teams, and we were talking to them and trying to figure out, like, why are you guys, do you guys understand that this is important? Yes, we get it. It's like, okay, why is that not happening? Well, we just don't have the data. Okay, well, who has the data? Well, this group has the data. Well, why don't you have the data? They won't give it to us, right? And it's like, well, how do they, and it blew my mind the first few times. It's like, what do you mean they don't give it to you? It's not their data. It's a company's data. They can't keep that from you. But through, through administrivia and politics and everything else, it can happen. So engagement is key. A CTI program that's unable to get engagement with its stakeholders is going to die. And it's, that's just the way that it is. So I'll just emphasize that. That's super important. The second kind of tier as we move through is documenting processes, which enables repeatable outcomes. And that's what we're looking for here. We're not looking to get lucky. We're not looking to have that one big win a year when we wrap up solar wins quicker than industry standard. We're looking to get consistent wins and maybe even small wins, but on a daily basis. And when we get those wins on a daily, weekly basis in a repeatable, predictable fashion, then right? That's what shows value for the program, and that's what gives you that staying power in the long run. The other thing is the documenting processes is what enables us to evaluate our performance and to improve. There's no maturation without documented processes, because you're just basing your assessment of what needs to be done to perform better on the last instance. You don't have any kind of continuity to measure yourself against over the long run. And that is something that comes with documenting processes. So as you look at the way that we lay out the maturity and the way that we move through that, that's the second one, would be documenting processes. And the third one then is leading through understanding and collaboration. As the CTI function supports all of these different elements of the business as represented by the domains in this model, but just the different groups and teams and functions within the company, it should organically develop an understanding of the environment and of operations that is unique to the CTI function. Right? It should be something that not every other group, incident response or vulnerability management, is not going around and talking to every single other group in the company and trying to understand, what do you do, how do you do it, and how can I help you do it better? They're not asking those questions because it's not part of their job to ask those questions. But that is the job of the CTI function. And as it does that well, it develops a very unique understanding and ability to inform decision making. So who would senior leadership come to when they want to understand what's the impact, potential impact of this type of decision on the broader organization? What team better than the CTI team to help them think through that and understand the different facets involved with that decision? So I think that covers it. Did I miss anything?
No, so far so good.
No? All right.
Yeah.
All right. Now.
I'm sorry, we got ahead of ourselves here.
Oh, we have 2 slides left.
We do.
Oh, dude, your slides.
Yeah. Wow,
Sorry,
John, wow. So just to echo like what John was saying, right? We have like 10, 11 domains, right? We do have 11 domains on the new version 1.1. But one thing that I want to reinforce here is when you look at the domains and you're like, wait, my team, we just have 3 domains or 4 domains. It really doesn't matter. Each team is different, and we accounted for that within the framework, right? We want to just make sure that we cover a broad spectrum rather than prescribe, this is the domain that you should have as a CTI team. If you're a CTI team that's only phishing or passwords or forums, like that's okay, right? You'll see the domains for that. If your team only deals with instant response, that's okay. So it's not like you have to collect them all like Pokemon. Rather, it's we wanted to make sure that we have a large coverage for all of you. So what we added to the version 1.1 here is fraud and abuse management. And some of you may be thinking, well, that's weird because that's a really important one. Why did you guys add it afterwards, right? After releasing the first framework with the 10 domains. And the main reason is what we talked about before. We were trying to go hand in hand with the CM2M, right? And the C2M2. And so we wanted to sort of go along, but we recognized that we needed to add fraud and abuse management. And we wanted to make sure that we have enough time, enough people with experience to come and collaborate on this and what you see next, right? But what we added here is some of the cases are mitigate financial fraud, brand protection, and account takeover, as you may expect it, right? We also added the assessment tool. And this makes sense, right? Because basically the framework is great, but it's even better when you can actually put it into practice, right? You actually want to grab the framework, the theory, and instead of you doing whatever you are trying to do, you can actually use the assessment tool. And so I'm going to show you a preview here. And before I keep going, just in case, this is the beta version. We are working on the next iteration of the assessment tool, so it's coming up. But I think this one is in pretty good shape. Regardless, I really like it. And so, like, you see the README, right? So you understand how it's going to work. On the left side, you'll see the maturity. On the right side, you'll see there is a scoring. And as we talked before, each domain has 3 cases, right? So what I'm showing you right now is the incident response domain, and this is the 3rd case. And so I just wanted to give you an example of how would you assess the 3rd case of the incident response domain. And if you see the section subtotal here, it's 27 out of 30. So we are at 90%. That's pretty good, right? Obviously, this is a fake assessment. So I don't expect everyone to be this good. I think we're all in different aspects, and that's okay, right? This is where the tool is supposed to come and help. If you look all the way down, it says domain total, right? So all the 3 cases from this domain, the incident response one, which is 57 out of 72, almost 80%. And this will tell you where you are across all of the cases within your domain. And something that I think it's going to be super helpful is this dashboard where you can see all of the domains, right, that applies to you, and you can keep track year over year, quarter over quarter, every 2 years, whatever is the cadence that you want to take in maturing your team, domain, or cases. Please get involved. We want your help, and we want you to collaborate with us. So please provide us your feedback. That's really important. We actually need your feedback. The version 1.1 was thanks to some of you who provided feedback. We listened to you, and we updated the framework. Am I forgetting about anything now?
No. That's good. It's yeah. I mean, we had a bunch of names up on the board of people who contributed to this, but the list of people who have submitted feedback and provided input to this is much longer. It has to be a community initiative. Like, this can't just be a few smart people with beards putting this thing together, right? It has to be driven by the community. So we'd really appreciate you all submitting feedback. Take a look at this and let us know what you think. I actually lead the feedback committee, and I can tell you we read every single piece of feedback that comes in. We're not automating anything. We're not, binning stuff off, just to throttle volume. Like, we're reading every single piece of feedback that comes back, and every bit of it, right? We're evaluating and either integrating into the next iteration, or we might be holding it and having discussions on it and figuring out how best to apply it. If it's not something that's immediately obvious, how to apply it. So yeah. Can't emphasize that enough. We want to hear from you and want to get you all involved, even if you don't have a beard. You don't need a beard. It's not a thing. We dropped that requirement like right before version 1.1. So you're totally good now. But yeah, I think that wraps us up.
Yeah, please join us. That's a QR code. Go to the website.